When we get started. GM, everybody, can give a quick little update on my end, or on our end, I suppose. So yesterday, the three proposals that were up for the last week all passed, which was BIP 34, a bunch of the sunrise changes, BIP 35, which is primarily the voting delegation proposal, and BOP 3, which forms the BNFT DAO. So the BIP 34 transaction was actually committed about an hour ago, but there are some final touches being put on the UI upgrades front. So I'll post a message in the announcements channel whenever that goes live. But I want to give a shout out to Beanstalk, whose work over the last 3 months is all getting merged at the same time over the last couple of days, which is super exciting. Which is to say, the morning auction stuff, a bunch of the UI that supports the voting delegation, as well as what we dubbed as claim into X, but which basically means being able to combine multiple transactions together in the UI. So think being able to rinse and deposit in a single transaction, being able to claim withdrawn beans and sowing in the same transaction, etc. So those are a few updates as far as the proposals go. So up next on the Mayflower front is Silo v3, and an initial version of that is being audited at the moment. We're hoping to get Halborn a final commit hash within the next week or so to keep things on track, and had been asking a couple different community members for some input on how we should run the process for selecting the seed rewards for the unripe assets, which has been of much discussion over the last few months. So, some people presented some interesting ideas around running it as like a few rounds of proposals. So think, one proposal that determines whether the seed reward should be the same for the two assets, another that would decide what the values actually are, and in that proposal, what the voting choices should be, whether it should be 0, 1, 2, or 0.51, 1.52 seeds per BDV, etc. So open to any suggestions there. So feel free to shoot me a note if you have any ideas there about what the best way to have the DAO collectively decide on what value should be in the ultimate Silo v3 BIP. So those are a few updates on my end. I'll turn it over to Chad to see if they have anything else they want to share on the engineering front.
Thanks, Guy.
Heads down fixing some stuff at the moment. Just let me know. No worries.
Yeah, all's good on our end. So like Guy mentioned, pushing all of the requisite code for the BIPs has been sort of the main focus for us over the last couple of days. And so the UI has seen a couple of updates. The morning auction update is sort of getting final touches now that the BIP has been committed on chain. And we've also a lot of other new features come out on the UI, notably the claim into X stuff. So maybe if he's with us, I'll let Beanstalk speak to kind of how those upgrades work and maybe give the community a quick overview. I know he's looking at some code now, so Sama, I'll trade off and look at some code, and you want to talk to the rest of the community about what you've been working on?
Hey, sure. So like they mentioned, a lot of the changes that have been pushed basically enable the user to claim a certain asset, such as like rinsing sprouts, being able to harvest their pods, and also claiming salad deposits and like using those in like some sort of transactions, such as like sow, buy fertilizer, as well as depositing into the silo. And then being able to also plant and being able to convert, withdrawal, and like also transfer those planted assets as well. And yeah, I think eventually we kind of want to go towards being able to support as many possible combinations as we can. But I think this is like a pretty good first step for that.
Awesome, thanks for that. Yeah, and for everybody's context, this feature is now live on the UI, and there's kind of two ways you can start to interact with it today. The first is when you have claimable assets. For example, if you've withdrawn something from the silo, you have harvestable pods or fertilized sprouts, you can use any of those assets to do most of the other major things on the farm, including depositing back in the silo or sowing or any of that sort of stuff. So that's all there, and you'll see when you have those claimable assets, a new section appear in the forms that basically helps you use them for that transaction. And then the second is that, to help minimize gas, we've added this, add additional transactions section, which you can see at the bottom of most forms. And this will let you pair up actions like enrooting while doing something like a deposit. So really just helps reduce the amount of additional gas for a given transaction. So again, all of that is live, and we have would love to get feedback from the community. And if you run into any issues or feel like something's not clear, please just drop us a message in the UI feedback chat, and we'd love to get all of that ironed out quickly.
Sweet. I guess just to give a little bit more detail on the state of Silo v3 and the Basin integration, I think one of the main things left for getting the final Silo v3 commit hash is actually the metadata for the 1155 tokens for deposits. I think that's something Kotaro had worked on, and those are looking really cool. So excited to share that with the community in the coming weeks. And on the Basin integration front, the initial audit for that did start, and I believe Pizza Man is adding some changes to allow farmers to convert across liquidity pools. So, across between the Bean ETH well and the Bean 3 curve pool and vice versa. So hopefully that change can get integrated and audited over the next few weeks. Red Beans, anything you want to share on the design front?
Sure. Quick update from me this week. Mostly have been making progress on the Basin UX and hoping to sort of finalize UI components and some of the interaction design in the set creative direction, which I mentioned last week. And then hoping to sort of start working on the more complex sort of site animations on Monday, which I think will be an important part of the flavor of the site. So looking forward to that. And otherwise have kind of just been heads down working on the Basin UX. So quick update from me this week. Thanks, Guy.
Sweet. Publius, anything you wanted to talk about this week?
Yes.
You're going a bit in and out, Pubs.
Hello, can you hear me better now? Awesome.
That does sound better.
Awesome. So wanted to talk a bit about the enroot function. So currently when you enroot deposits, it updates the BDV of the deposit. So say the last time you updated, Beanstalk was about 20% recapitalized. Now it's 25% recapitalized. The BDV of your deposits are going to get updated to account for that. Now, how Enroot differs from Lambda to Lambda convert, as both are functions that update the BDV of a deposit, is that Enroot also credits the grown stock you've earned on top of the deposit. When you enroot a deposit, in addition to updating that BDV, it also proportionally increases the grown stock you've earned the same amount. So if you had 20% grown stock, or if the BDV, as we said last time was 20% revitalized, now it's 25% revitalized, it's going to increase your grown stock by 25%. Now, it accounts for all grown stock from the season of deposit until the current season. That means that it's crediting your grown stock from both before the exploit and after replant. Now, I would like to, kind of bring to the table and discuss potentially changing this such that it only credits your grown stock for before the exploit and not since replant. I think in general, the DAO chose to go with a very aggressive barn raise strategy. And similar to how, it seems like the DAO is in favor of reducing the amount of seeds associated with unripe deposits, it might make sense to also potentially change the Enroot function to account for this grown stock change. Now, currently, as it is, all, the way the Enroot function currently works are all unripe deposits are earning, only a proportion of the full amount of grown stock now. But once Beanstalk is fully recapitalized, they will be, be receiving the full amount of grown stock for the fully revitalized, deposit even currently. And, while I guess the concern that I have is that this might potentially end up in a situation where Beanstalk mints too much stock. Beanstalk as a protocol does not necessarily owe, this, any grown stock since replant to, unripe token holders. It kind of has some kind of, obligation to them potentially, for pre-exploit grown stock, but post-replant grown stock was not, was not taken away in the exploit. So, kind of wanted to potentially see if anyone had kind of thoughts or comments or, wanted to bring this discussion to the table for potential inclusion in the Siler V3 upgrade.
Publius, could you briefly restate the
Yes.
final
Just to summarize, the question is whether or not holders of unripe deposits should be credited for the grown stock associated with the full BDV of the revitalized assets, even if the assets were not revitalized at the time that the seasons were passing. So it's a question of whether or not the grown stock should grow at a rate sort of after the fact in line with the fully revitalized value, or only the value at the time that the stock was grown.
Yeah, like Mod, I'm not totally following still.
I would defer to other people if anyone else has a more concrete question, but I guess just kind of my question based off of that is what like the two different scenarios would be if either path were to be followed, if the stock is grown as like from the beginning before the revitalized assets are recapitalized, like what that means. Does that mean a for kind of dilution of holder? I don't know. I guess what are kind of the parties that would be affected by either route being taken? And that's kind of what I would be curious about. But again, I'm not following entirely. I understand what the question is, though.
So I guess first off, it's not necessarily an either or path. It's, does the DAO change the function from, kind of the state that it currently exists in today or not? Currently when you enroot, it, proportionally credits your grown stock from the original season of deposit until the current season. So let's just say that, you have, 10 grown stock, and you're updating the BDV by, let's say 20% of what it currently is. And let's say that, there was, the deposit was 50 seasons before the exploit, and it's been 50 seasons since. I know kind of like the math doesn't quite correspond to the actual seeds, but, as an example. So to restate, you have a deposit that has, kind of 10 grown stock, and it was deposited 50 seasons before the exploit, and now we're 50 seasons after Beanstalk was replanted. currently, and now you're enrooting your deposit to increase the BDV by 20%. Currently, Beanstalk is going to reward you for grown stock for both the 50 seasons that you had deposited before the exploit and the 50 seasons that have occurred since the replant. So if you have a total of 10 grown stock, you're going to get 2 grown stock. And this is stock that's kind of minted out of thin air. The suggestion is to potentially change it so that Enroot only credits only credits for the seasons that occurred before exploit. So in this case, it would only be the first 50 seasons that the deposit was deposited for before the exploit, and it would only award 1 grown stock. Now, hopefully this example makes it more clear. So now potentially to discuss the implications. Kind of the biggest implication is that currently as it stands, the stock supply has kind of this unbound recapitalization amount where the longer time goes on, the more amount of stock that gets given out to unripe deposit holders in the form of grown stock as Beanstalk gets recapitalized. And this kind of means that the longer Beanstalk continues to exist, as it becomes recapitalized, the incentive for depositing into the silo kind of actually decreases. If the change were to be made, then there's some fixed amount of grown stock that corresponds to deposits between the time of they were originally deposited and the exploit that is going to be recapitalized. So this would make it so that there only is a fixed amount of grown stock that will ever be minted as a result of Beanstalk being recapitalized, as opposed to this unbound amount. And kind of the concern is that this recapitalization leading to too much inflation in stock and decreasing the incentive for new participants to enter the silo. Now, who does this hurt? This hurts unripe deposit token holders, as they're going to receive less grown stock over time as Beanstalk becomes recapitalized. But similar to how the DAO is already considering decreasing the amount of seeds per BDV for unripe assets, it might be interesting for them to also consider this change to the Enroot function.
Would stock be retroactively adjusted, or would this just be future Enroots would have this behavior? And so maybe in theory, people who had already enrooted and gained, what would be excess stock in the new system would have to wait for a while to enroot because of their current balance. Because my understanding of the Enroot function is that you cannot lose stock.
Yes, this is correct. Kind of retroactively, all enrooted grown stock or revitalized stock that has been claimed will continue to exist in its current form. And going forward, as Beanstalk becomes recapitalized, grown stock will continue to accrue. So anyone who has enrooted or claimed their revitalized stock is not going to kind of lose more grown stock going forward. It would be starting from now, as Beanstalk becomes recapitalized, it would just award less grown stock. So, it would probably be most efficient for actors to enroot before the upgrade occurs to ensure that they're able to maximize the amount of grown stock that they were issued from the current system. So there would be no sort of you need to wait and retroactively catch up. It would just be from now on, the Enroot function is only going to reward you between your original deposit season and the replant season instead of the original deposit season and the current season.
Got it. But just from a UX perspective, to be clear, users wouldn't lose any stock when this upgrade, that they already hold. They would just lose, in theory, the stock that they would have gained moving forward based on the change.
Yes.
An interesting side incentive that just came to mind here is that if you're a stockholder or currently an unripe stockholder your incentive now is to try to go increase the amount of recapitalization ahead of this upgrade so that you can claim a bunch of extra grown stock, which may not actually be a bad thing.
Publius, could you go through the example again of having the deposit pre-exploit that you enroot post-exploit?
Yes. So the example was you have a deposit that currently has a total of 10 grown stock. And let's say Beanstalk is 20% recapitalized. Now, in the case, before we even get into the split between seasons before and seasons after, as it exists today, let's assume right now somebody apes the fertilizer and buys it all. So Beanstalk's now 100% recapitalized. In this instance, you would have 40 revitalized grown stock because all of your grown stock, regardless of when it was earned, grows proportionally to the recapitalization.
And what is revitalized grown stock? Are you just saying revitalized stock?
Well, revitalized stock, there are kind of two types of revitalized stock. There's revitalized stock from the increasing of your BDV. Each deposit is awarded currently 1 stock per BDV. So there's the increase in the base stock associated with your deposit, which is the increase of that, stock on deposit. And that's the stock that you get for a convert. When you perform a normal convert, your grown stock stays the exact same. When your BDV increases, you get more base stock. So that's kind of the convert. Convert increases the base stock associated with a deposit, which is the stock you get for depositing. Now, the kind of where Enroot differs from convert is that it also increases your grown stock. So you can think of revitalized stock as some summation of the revitalized base stock that you get for depositing plus the revitalized grown stock. So let's go back to that example. Say you have a deposit and it currently has like a base stock of 1. It has a BDV of 1. You have like 5 deposited unripe beans. You have 5 deposited unripe beans. Beanstalk's 20% recapitalized. So the BDV of your deposit, let's just, to make math easy, is 1. You have 1 base stock associated with that deposit that you got for the initial deposit. And now since then, you've earned 10 grown stock on top of that deposit. Now, when Beanstalk, someone apes the fertilizer, no seasons pass, and you enroot that deposit, you're gonna, the BDV increases 5x, but also so does the amount of grown stock that you have and the base stock. So you now have 14 total.
Stock
or you
increase proportionally? Why does the grown stock increase proportionally?
Because this is how the enroot function was implemented in the barn race. Yeah, and kind of to that point, that's what we're considering changing here, in the sense that, kind of having, kind of the amount of future expectation of stock, to be revitalized stock, increasing unbounded to now having it only, so in that case we were just discussing, there would be 40, kind of 44 revitalized grown stock. 4 of it would be revitalized base stock, and 40 of it would be revitalized grown stock. Is that clear? And this is how it works today.
Sort of. Maybe the change you're proposing making is how I understood it to already work. Anyway. Had no idea that we're revitalized grown stock was a thing.
So given that, kind of now to discuss what the change would do, let's say a change is being made, let's say that, grown stock grows linearly over time. Let's assume a fixed seeds per BDV, as is currently the case in Beanstalk. Let's say there were 50 seasons before the exploit, or the deposit was, there have been 100 seasons since the deposit was first deposited. 50 of those seasons were before the exploit, and 50 of those seasons were after the exploit. What this change would do is make it so that only revitalized grown stock would be attributed, revitalized grown stock would only be attributed to the seasons that happened before replant instead of all seasons the deposit was made. So in this case where it was deposited 50 seasons before replant, and there have been 50 seasons since replant, 20 of that revitalized grown stock, meaning half of it, because half of the seasons were before the exploit and half after, would go away. So if this change were to be made, someone apes the fertilizer, there would be a total of 24 revitalized grown stock instead of 44, meaning that the base stock would be fully revitalized and half of the grown stock would be revitalized, and half of the grown stock would be revitalized, making a total of 24.
Can you talk about what you'd expect the effect to be on the current stock growth in terms of magnitude?
Well, kind of in terms of magnitude, I guess first off, let's discuss the micro and then look at the macro. So on the micro, when no one is buying fertilizer, stock growth would continue to function as the exact same. Where kind of there's grown stock given out every season, and that continues to happen. Now, the difference comes in the case when there's a substantial change in the revitalization, or in the recapitalization of Beanstalk, such that there is a significant amount of grown stock. Now, kind of how we compare the two different circumstances is mainly just like by comparing the average season of an LP deposit before replant and kind of how much time has occurred since replant. I think replant was somewhere around season 6,000, I want to say. Not exactly sure. If someone has that number, please share. But I think it was like season 6,034.
6704.
6074.
Okay, awesome. So let's just say 6,000, right? And let's say the average LP deposit was in season 3,000, right? So the average LP deposit has 3,000 seasons of grown stock, right? So now let's say we're in season 12,000, right? So kind of twice as much time has occurred since replant as the average unripe LP deposit was deposited in, averaged by BDV, since, or, kind of before the exploit. So currently as it sits, that means that there's going to be 3 times as much revitalized grown stock than there would be if this change were to be made. Now, we fast forward another 6,000 seasons. This means that there's going to be 5 times as much revitalized grown stock every time Beanstalk is recapitalized than before, and so on and so on. So kind of as more time goes on, the more recapitalized grown stock or revitalized grown stock will be created whenever some sort of recapitalization happens to Beanstalk. and it continues to kind of grow linearly, but in an unbounded form, which means, kind of at the margin, as Beanstalk becomes more recapitalized, with this change, the longer it takes for Beanstalk to become recapitalized, the greater the delta incentive to participate in the silo is as a response to the recapitalization.
For what it's worth, I'm going to type out a quick example as I understand it in the chat for people who want to read or are listening in.
Feel free to unmute and speak up if you have any questions. I know there's been a handful in the chat. I'll just read one that Mod posted, which is that how do we account for this when unripe assets eventually can be converted for normal assets? Will every address deposit have a different recorded stock?
I think the expectation is that when you convert an unripe asset, you will have enrooted it beforehand. So when you enroot it, it claims that revitalized stock and seeds, and then you convert it, and the convert operation happens as normal. So, I believe as it currently sits today, that if you happen to convert some unripe deposit while you have existing revitalized stuff, it forfeits it. And if that is the case, the UI should probably be updated to perform some type of auto enroot before it allows you to convert. But that's kind of how it works, the relationship between enroot and convert.
So Publius, just to restate and make sure I understand, grown stock would be calculated now as the delta between season 6074 and whenever the deposit was made for unripe deposits, which caps the grown stock.
This would be after the change. Yes.
Correct. And then effectively what you are doing is recapitalizing the base stock associated with the deposit and that grown stock that occurred, or that I guess you owned at the time of exploit, but no additional grown stock is being minted to the deposit.
Exactly. And I think that is, kind of paints kind of the idea of where this is coming from, grown stock that farmers already had before the exploit should be revitalized, as that grown stock was lost and taken from them, but grown stock they were awarded after replant was not taken away from them in the same way that the pre-exploit grown stock was.
But when this change happens, whatever stock you had grown from unripe after the exploit will be removed, yeah?
No. Any revitalized stock revitalized grown stock that has already been claimed will be left in place. So anyone who has enrooted, before the change is made will keep all their existing grown stock. I guess that is an option, Pizza Man, to take that away from them retroactively. However, it does seem a little unfair to take it away after it's already been given, and it would be a much larger engineering task.
So, sorry I joined late, but is what you're proposing basically just changing the seeds for unripe to 0?
No. What's being kind of currently as it stands, the enroot function awards you revitalized stock. Some of that revitalized stock is associated with the base stock of the deposit that was given when you deposited, and some of that revitalized stock is kind of the proportional increase in grown stock you've awarded on top of the deposit. What this change would do is make it so, and currently the amount of revitalized grown stock you get is proportional to the grown stock, all of the grown stock you've earned on that deposit, including both pre-exploit grown stock and post-exploit grown stock. What this change would do is make it so only the pre-exploit grown stock is included in the revitalized grown stock, not post-exploit grown stock.
Pizza Man, if it's helpful, I dropped an example in the Barnyard chat.
Got it. Cool. So at a technical level, would the implementation of this look like something inside of the convert facet, inside of the Enroot deposit function, when it calculates delta stock and calculates a stock reward? It would basically calculate your stock reward up until the season 6074 rather than up to the current season. Or is there something else that needs to happen at a technical level?
That's pretty much it, but it would need to make sure to include all the already existing grown stock. So it would basically say how much stock do you already have associated with this deposit, what's the proportional increase of BDV in deposit, and multiply that by the original seeds per BDV times the amount of seasons before replant that that the deposit was made.
Got it. So it seems like a relatively straightforward change at a technical level. Then it's more of a the bigger issue then is like if people want to move forwards with this with a BIP. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I guess the spirit of this BIP would be that the unripe holders have too much stock for basically not doing anything. Like the underlying already was stolen, and there doesn't cost them. There's no opportunity cost for them to do nothing and accumulate a lot of stock in the system, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, currently there is kind of this, kind of risk within Beanstalk of kind of the supply of stock growing uncontrollably large due to the recapitalization. And the longer it takes for Beanstalk to be recapitalized, which, one could argue the longer it takes to be recapitalized is a statement of Beanstalk being less healthy, for the stock supply to kind of linearly grow over time, kind of implies that Beanstalk is increasing the total expected supply of stock as it's realizing that it's in a less healthy state. So I guess anyone have any final questions or comments before we wrap this up? Awesome. So, this is just an idea, and kind of wanted to gauge where people's heads are at in terms of it and get some feedback. But, would appreciate it if people could continue to kind of think on the issue going forward, and perhaps, another discussion if warranted sometime in the near future.
Has some sort of analytics been done to determine what percentage of stock is owned by unripe holders versus ripe holders?
Not yet. And, I guess that would be a good next step to kind of determine, have some sort of analytics of the current, potential revitalized stock and some kind of graphic reflecting how the revitalized grown stock, the potential total revitalized grown stock increases over time. And yeah, as you said, some sort of, kind of percent of total stock that is, kind of revitalized or, kind of unripe versus non-unripe. But, my understanding that is at the moment, the vast majority of it is associated with unripe deposits.
Do you envision a BIP like this shipping alongside the Mayflower update or after Basin and all that?
I think as far as timing, it doesn't matter too much. But, kind of as you stated earlier, the development change to reflect this is quite trivial. So I would imagine, potentially pending what auditors say and such, it would be possible to ship it alongside the Mayflower update. But, it's kind of downstream of development timelines. But, I would say, kind of, as you said, the development effort should be quite trivial. Now, it's always hard to know, and sometimes it's unexpectedly difficult. But the expectation would be sooner rather than later. Potentially even proposing it alongside one of the other Mayflower updates. Awesome. Well, I guess on that note, happy to move the conversation forward if there's something else for you to discuss, Sky.
Great. Nothing in particular. We're just gonna, open the floor to see if there's anything else folks wanted to discuss, bring up, ask questions about.
Yeah, I had two really quick things. One, we just put in the Beanifesto outline. We put it in yesterday in the Scribe channel. And then I'm going to put in a thread regarding BD stuff. And yeah, I'll explain it, but just looking for kind of community feedback if anyone has any opinions or wants to check it out. It'll be in the Scribe channel, both those links and threads. And just looking for anyone that has comments, questions, concerns about anything. Those are kind of the two topics that we're going to be tackling next week. So,
Awesome. Anyone got anything else? Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.